Hey everyone, welcome to the 2022 Best Games Ever with Boardvengers, except we're doing it at the end of January because promptness is not our specialty. However, you know what is our specialty? Listening to the magical silken voice of Roberto Lopez. Sheer boredom. Back to you.
Thank you, Devon. It is a balmy 30 degrees here in this Massachusetts day. How is it over your way?
I drank at the excellent point of also not knowing the weather because I'm not an adult. It's cold here, but not 30 degrees cold.
It is cold. It is cold. To your point, it is our Boardvengers 2022 Game of the Year special. Welcome everyone. How's everyone doing? Well, in my Discord thing, in my view, I'm gonna go from top left all the way. My first is Azkadelia. How are you? Where can we find you? Welcome aboard.
Oh, hello, Azkadelia here, the Azkadorkable gamer. You can find me on TikTok and Instagram. I'm currently in Florida, and where it can't decide whether it wants to be cold or hot. So it was 30 degrees yesterday. It's 80 degrees today.
Golly.
Yeah, I want to be where you are.
Yeah,
That's my biggest secret that everyone knows. Welcome. Excited to see what your 2022 Game of the Year is. Devon, thank you for the intro. Where can we find you?
You can find me barely on YouTube. I am Devon Talks Tabletop. I have a YouTube channel that is of the same name, and then I also collaborate with Meg and Alex over on Board Game Co., where Meg and I have a daily mission of trying to have him talk less. So
or at least
either of those places are, at least a little slower. Either of those places you can find me, and I think besides this wonderful space with these wonderful people, that's about it, I think. Oh wait, no. I'm also on Play the Game Headquarters, which we have a playthrough series that I do there with Daniel and Allison, who are the only other people in Arkansas that I know of that play board games.
I actually have an idea for another channel. It's Man in a Cardigan, because your cardigan game is on point. On point. Mm-hmm. Love it.
Let me welcome you to the neighborhood.
Yeah. Next up I have is McKay. How are you today? Where can we find you?
Hi. I'm good. I recently rebranded, so I went to introduce myself. I was like, wait, nope, different. So now I'm Geek Sprout Gaming. I am mostly on Instagram, and I just I'm rebranding to be less of a critic. I used to be the board game critic. If you knew me as that, then welcome to Geek Sprout Gaming. I was like, I'm not as depressing and critical as I once thought I was. So yeah, now I talk a lot about plans, fun facts, and mostly board games. But come join me over there or on the Boardvengers. Those are kind of my two outlets for board games.
Nice.
Awesome. Think the video would get flagged if we put an "allow me to reintroduce myself"?
Probably.
Yeah.
In there? Yeah, okay. So
I think
we'll just leave it at that. Nelson, how are you? Where can we find you?
I'm doing good. You can find me, Nelson, all over on YouTube or Twitch, or if you like card games, Nelson all over cards on YouTube.
Perfect.
That was clean. That was really well done.
That was clear.
This before. The rest of us were like, we do.
I want to be like Nelson in the future.
Aw.
Professor Meg, how are you? Where can we find you?
Good. For anyone that saw her little appearance, she'll be here for the whole video now, but here's Miss Nuka. I'm Professor Meg everywhere. That's where you can find me. You can also find me on Board Game Co. sometimes. You can find me on Camp Co-op, streaming live gameplay of things like Gloomhaven Digital and Roleplay Adventures. And sometimes I get to go guest star over on Nelson's channel playing some Arkham Horror. Life is good.
Life is good.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Life is good. Now I'm Roberto, Shear Boredom. Horrible for SEO, because I'm a hairstylist by day. Shear like scissors, board like board game. No one can ever find me. And I, too, also guest star on Nelson's thing, on his live stream. I wish I was as clean as Nelson here with this horribly done intro here. Doing dice throwing stuff. You could see me there sometimes, and then I have my own Shear Boredom Table Talk and Shear Boredom on all the socials. But let's get right into our Game of the Year. I'm gonna start us off with. Actually, this really did come out last year because it was new to me. I first played it at Origins, and I believe, well, three of us were a part of this big group. That was the only time I've ever played it, as far as being a part of the game. The rest of the time, I've already told the game. That's Blood in the Clock Tower, where Nelson, Professor Meg, Devon, and we all got in a giant circle of 19 people, 18 people. How many people were we?
19 of
We're a
us, yeah.
lot of people. And at that game, I was a traveler, so I was able to go in and out. I was the which token or which character I was, but I know Devon.
You were the mayor.
Because I was able to give 3 votes to people. The mayor does something else. It's close to being the mayor.
There was some politician.
It was some politician.
It was Wyatt.
You were the demon. You were the demon who almost got in the beginning of the game. Because I nominated you right out the get, knowing that Alex was the gunslinger, and hoping that he would use his gunslinger power to kill you. And I just wanted to see it play out, because I thought it'd be funny. But lo and behold, if it happened, the demon would have been.
That would have been.
I don't know if there was
been
another
disastrous.
Demon.
That would have been disastrous. and then I would have.
I knew this game, but now I think it's a completely different game.
I was gonna say, explain it to us a little bit, Roberto. I mean, I'm getting.
Sure.
Why is it any different than Werewolf or Mafia?
Blood on the Clock Tower is a game where everyone has a specific role. Now that role is unique to you. There's no 2 roles are the same. In base Trouble Brewing, you have, I believe, the washerwoman and let's say the librarian, where one will know townsperson, another one will know an outsider. That's close, but still it's different information. In the beginning of the game, you get a secret role, and then get into a night phase where I start drip feeding information to people. And when everyone wakes up, that's when you decide to either bluff or tell the truth about you as a character. If you have information that is worthy of telling, you may want to hold on to it. You may not want to hold on to it. It's completely up to how you want to play the game. From my understanding, because I haven't played a lot of Mafia, when you die in Blood, or if you die in Blood in the Clock Tower, you're still pretty important. You can still talk, and you have one more vote to vote someone off the island, if you will, to execute during the daytime. If you die, your player power goes away. But let's say there's a player called the Raven's Keeper, that if they die at night, you get to pick someone during the night, and they immediately get to know the role. That's their player power, and that's a pretty powerful thing to have for the rest of the game. Really doubling down on someone's.
It's a good
particular
KFC
role.
sandwich. I can't believe
It is a good KFC sandwich. But on top of all that, you get Drunken and Poison, and this is just base Trouble Brewing. I've done Sex and Violets one time, but base Trouble Brewing,
which is also connected to Blood on the Clock Tower. It's not just all something separate.
Back to manscaping with Shear Boardom. In Trouble Brewing, you have poison. A minion could be a poisoner, and if you're poisoned, your ability doesn't work for the entire round. Let's say I played a game where someone was the Slayer, and the Slayer power is the ability to kill someone. But if it's one time use, they point to someone. If they're the demon, they die, hands down. That's it. So that person tries to hold on to that for as long as they can. But there was another role that died in the night. They get to see who the player is with their role. But the person that I was able to show was poisoned. And the person that was Slayer, someone had already sussed her out thinking she was something entirely different. Because that character was poisoned, I then was able to give him false information, kind of play with the game a little bit. And that's what I love being the storyteller, because running the game, you get to see the puzzle play out. I gave him information as to who the Slayer was. The Slayer was a Slayer, but I showed that character someone entirely different because that character was poisoned. that's poisoning. And if you're drunk, you pull out a regular token, but you don't know if you're the drunk. If you're, let's say, the fortune teller, and I believe the fortune teller, let's say the empath knows how many people next to you are good, or bad. I wake you up and say, 0, 1, 2, or 1 or 2. But if you're the drunk, you can completely mess with the drunk and give them a 2 or 1 or a 0 at any point in the game. And that's the only time that I, as a storyteller, am able to give false information. It's up to people to just get together, break off into little groups, and really figure out who the demon is. So, during the daytime, there's also an execution phase. You can nominate someone, and from there you decide who can be executed, and majority wins. If it's the demon, they are dead, but let's say there are other characters take over the role as a demon. That can happen. If it's a big game, that can happen, and the game continues. If you kill off a regular person, the game continues. If 2 players are alive and one of them is a demon, evil wins, and if good is able to take out the demon, good wins. That's why
it's super cheerful. It's a cheerful game.
Yeah,
I love playing
tower.
it on the clock tower. It's great for me, and I've really trying to up my game as far as storytelling and narration goes. I want to try playing the Avatar RPG, which just showed up on my doorstep. I want to play a couple of games of that. I like that role, and this has been forcing me to be better, tell a better narrative with these players, and kind of embellish and flourish the story for players at hand. The other thing that I love about this game is it takes a lot of coercion for people to play. Don't get me wrong. It's like, you want to play this game? I can play 8 to 12. No, I really don't like Mafia. I don't like these social deduction games. I'm like, trust me, just play it one time. Once they play it one time, it's let's play it again. That was a good time. Let's do it one more time.
So who else has played it? Do we have opposing opinions? I haven't played it yet. Sure, Boredom's never invited me to play Blood on the Clock Tower, so
I have played it and I have an opposing opinion.
Yay.
So what I will say about the game, and let me preface this by saying I don't love social deduction games. It's not my favorite type of genre of game, but I do think Blood on the Clock Tower has a couple of things going for it. One, having the GM or the person that's running the game has a little bit of flexibility in making sure that people are having a good time at the table, where a lot of other social deduction games don't necessarily always have that. And so I do think that is good. The other thing I will preface with saying is that the only time I have played it is the time that Devon killed me, and that soured my relationship with him forever. And
Dude, seriously.
But
honestly, me killing people, that's, people have soured on me for way less.
And that's fair. That's fair. But it was with 19 people. It was a lot. I did not know how to play the game. I figured out most of the rules about halfway through the game. So it just was not a great experience in that sense. With all that being said, I think it's a very long social deduction game. So if you blunder in the first round and you have an issue, it can be a 2-hour game, and I think that's my biggest critique of it. With all the things that are going really good for it, if I had to pick out a critique, that would probably be it, is that it can be a little bit long, especially if you do make a blunder right there at the beginning.
Yeah, I'm probably somewhere in the middle of both of you. So I don't have the storytelling experience that Roberto has. It's probably something that I would enjoy a lot, coming from kind of the RPG background that I have. Like, my wife and I do D&D on a weekly or bi-weekly basis and stuff. So I really enjoy RPG systems, and I enjoy the stories that you can craft in that. And I think the storytelling side of Blood on the Clock Tower is good. I do think that I would probably say that my caveat that leans into Nelson's bad experience, and that can also make for the good experience that Roberto has had with a lot of his friends, which is apparently none of us, because we haven't been invited. But is that the first experience, I think, can make or break it for a lot of people. And it's really a game that, if you have too many people, I think can come across as bloated, or overly intimidating. Because if it's the first time that you're playing, and McKay, this kind of goes to your question about how the game functions, is every single person has a unique role, which means the more people you have, the more individual roles that have to be accounted for. And that means that the possibilities of, every role has something that might make sense for you to lie and pretend that you're another role, so that if you're talking to someone that is the demon or is a bad person, maybe you won't get killed. Or if you're talking to someone that's a good person, maybe you won't give away that you're evil. So the larger it gets, the more complex it gets, and not in a good way. Only if you're familiar with the game does that complexity equal depth and experience and fun. If you're new to the game, the bigger it gets, that complexity makes it not accessible. So I would say that I think that probably the best showcase for Blood on the Clock Tower that I can think of, and this comes from someone that doesn't watch board game content really at all, is No Rules Barred. So they just recently, like during the pandemic, they did a lot of digital Blood on the Clock Tower, and just recently they wrapped up a Kickstarter campaign where they got funding to do it in person. And so they have 3 of those 8 episodes out on their YouTube channel, and they're in a theater, actually multiple camera angles, sets and stuff like that, really, really well produced. And I think it shows kind of the best option for it, and they have a couple of different ways to play. One of them is called Teensyville, and there's just 5 or 6 of them that play. But I think if you're going to introduce someone to the game, I think the best thing to do is to have the lowest player count possible. Maybe just 8 or 9 people or something, just to show off how the game functions with the fewest amount of rolls. And also, if you have something like Nelson's experience where you die early in the game, his role was quite valuable. So I killed him very quickly. And then he had to spend the rest of the 2-hour session sitting there. Now, I will say that, to Blood on the Clock Tower's credit, it does something that almost every other social deduction game like this doesn't do, where once you're dead, you still have power, in the sense that you have a ghost vote that you can spend one time, but it could be in a deciding vote that wins or loses the game. So it is still valuable, and you can still give information and talk. In other games, if you're dead, you're just not able to participate as much. So there is still value even if you die, but in a smaller game, Nelson, maybe he died, but maybe he's only dead for 30 more minutes or 40 more minutes or something, rather than 2 hours. And then you can play again. And when you have that smaller group, it's maybe the rules better, maybe you're playing with the same rules and just switching it up. So I do think that there is a way to bring people into the game, and it's the kind of game where if you don't do it right, it can definitely make you never want to play again. So I think it's probably one of the best games in the entire genre of its type, but it definitely, you still need to cultivate a good experience for it.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
All great points. I have story told probably a dozen times now, and every time I try to dial it in a little bit more. Now with a new group, I say, hey, it's important for y'all to do, or to break out into different spaces, different people, so that way you can get a feel for the game. And right off the bat, as soon as they get their roles, I go off to the side and I make sure everyone comes to me and I explain what I'm gonna do with their character, whether it's the first night and beyond. Make sure that everyone understands their role to the best of their ability, so that when the game starts, we're good to go. I won't, because of our first experience, I probably won't do that many people or have set up a game with 19 people. I think 8 to 12 is where it shines. I was able to run a Teensyville game with Professor Meg's husband recently, and that was really fun. I think we were 6. Yeah, they were 6, and that was just a good time. And fortunately, Dan has played the game before, and he was able to help the newbies out, saying, "Okay, we're gonna talk in different pods, so on and so forth." So I really they were able to enjoy their experience a little bit more, I think, because Dan had prior knowledge of the game, and he was like, "We got to do this and this and this, and let's talk."
Very cool.
That is my 2022 pick. Let's popcorn it over. Let's bring it back to elementary school. Did any of you do the popcorn? Like popcorn?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Nice.
I've eaten popcorn before.
I should be eating popcorn now for breakfast. I'm gonna say popcorn McKay.
Sorry, I had to clear my throat, so I just muted myself for a minute. McKay here, underprepared for this. No, so if you aren't familiar with the Boardvengers, I tend to skew on the lighter side of games, and so I definitely leaned into that this time. But as I was thinking through, the reason I chose my 2022 Game of the Year, and it is new to me game, I think it was published in 2019. The reason I chose it was because it came as a complete surprise. I've been gradually skewing heavier toward heavier games and weight-wise, but that's another conversation. I've been skewing heavier over time, and
I thought you meant weight, like the weight scale on BGG for a second.
Yes, is that not what that's indicating? That's not like my.
No. Every time you play on Mars, you gain 4 pounds. Yeah,
That's probably true. The amount of time it takes to sit there. Anyway, so the reason I chose this one is it was genuinely a surprise to me. When I read about it, when I did my research, I was like, it just feels too light. And then when I actually played it, I was blown away. It's a good level of very teachable quickly, but it has a decent amount of thought can be put into the strategy. I'll just say it now. Scout is my
Nice.
2022 Game of the Year, and it's just solid. Like, it fits. The fact that I could get my in-laws to play it and buy it was a huge win, because it's hard to get them to play anything that's not played with a standard deck of poker cards. And just a really quick intro into what it is. It's I tried to explain to someone what the mechanics were. I was like, it's not really trick taking, but it kind of is. So you have these cards that are double-sided. I guess every card is double-sided, but they can be read upside down or right side up. When you get your full hand of cards, you get to choose whether you want to keep them this way or flip them this way, and that's a one-time decision. And then you're basically building a performances in the middle of the table that somebody will place one, and it stays there until somebody can or wants to outperform them or beat it with a performance from their hand. So you're playing runs or sets of cards to exceed everyone else's. If you exceed their performance, you take all of the cash that they had played in the center. If somebody can't beat it, then they have to poach one of your performers, and you get paid for the headhunting fee, basically. Seems really simple, and I'm just going to say, like, yes, it really is. I don't know. There's just, I've played it probably 12, 13 times, if not more, and I'm still like, I don't know exactly what the best goal is, like, or the best angle to play this. I've seen people build up a huge run or a huge set in their hand, because also if you play a big enough performance and nobody can beat it until it comes back to you, then the round ends and everybody's cards and hands go negative. So I've seen people like build up and then just like play enough to land everybody else with negatives. I've seen people just like take every opportunity to like outshow, and that seems to work okay. I don't know. It's just like one that I haven't been able to pin down, and I don't know. It's been a real pleasure for me.
Yeah. No, I think that Scout is one of those like clever games where it is really simple, but also the way that people play it differs. And then because the way that people play it differs, how you need to play against whatever strategy they're using shifts. And so like it's a really simple system, and then how people interpret it or play with it kind of I think dictates how things go from game to game. And since people play differently all the time, like I think that I think it is a really clever little game.
It feels like one of those games. It's one of those that I look at and I'm like, why didn't I think of that? Right? Like the mechanics are so simple in a good way that it's really easy to pick up, play, but there's so much strategic depth there. And I was blown away. I played it for the first time last year at Gen Con. I think Roberto, you brought it out, and I was just like, this is phenomenal. Like I was really happy and really surprised with how much depth there is to that little card game.
It's a good one. I got to play it with Allison and Dan at Origins last year, and I immediately wanted to buy it, couldn't find it. Fun fact, though, I ended it with negative 25 points on the first round.
Oh, no.
But I still wanted to play it again, and that's like a testament to it, because I was the only one in the negatives, and I was so vastly in the negatives. I spent the whole game trying to just get positive, but I still wanted to play it, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. I mean, to counter to what we were, some of the criticism that we were levying at Blood on the Clock Tower, if you lose in Scout, it doesn't take 2 hours for the game to end. It plays very, very quickly.
Yeah.
So, it's, I mean, I think when Allison and Daniel are also the ones that taught me. And I think, when they taught me, I think we played 2 or 3 times in a row because it plays that fast. So
to me, though, like the real value, like I said, the reason why I wouldn't say it's like the best game I played last year, but it reminded me why I like board games. You have all these mechanics that nothing's super new about it, but the way they come together in this particular rule set was like, it was eye-opening, and it was really encouraging that games can still do that. That new games that are coming out can still surprise, even though the mechanics aren't revolutionary and there's no gimmicks. It's a small box, but it just packed so much of a punch. And I'm like, that gives me a lot of hope. Well, it basically burns a hole in my pocket because I just want to keep buying more and more games because I'm like, these interesting combinations are still out there and it's fun.
Yeah, Scout didn't grab me. I know a lot of people really, really love it. And for me, like, there's nothing wrong with it. I think the mechanics work really, really well, but it just doesn't grab me. I think around that same time we played Cat in the Box. And that one like blew my mind. That I think with my love for that and then Scout, I don't know what it is about Scout, but I just couldn't. I would sit down to play it, but I don't think I'd ever ask to play it.
I think to piggyback off of that, if you are like you are, Meg, like a deeply invested trick-taking game player, this feels so close to that. I could see why it could be a little bit of a turnoff. If you love trick-taking games, it feels like it is almost one, and it could feel like it's just not there. So like I understand that from someone who really enjoys trick-taking games.
Well, I think in terms of like trick-taking as a mechanic, trick taking is kind of like you have your best laid plans in your hand, and then it's up to like how you either play it out with the people across the table from you or at the table with you, or like as they start to mess it up, how you adapt it. And I feel like Scout is a little bit more like you're playing the game in your hand, and it's I think it's a little bit more isolated from like that kind of like direct competition, because like if someone just has the card set up based off of how it goes to where, like McKay said, where they can set up like a 6 card or 7 card laydown, like you don't know that that's happening when it's happening, and then when it happens, you just you can maybe respond to it. So yeah, I think it is like a sister game to trick taking, but like I love trick taking as well, and it doesn't scratch that particular itch for me, but I still like it and enjoy it though.
I would hesitate to call it a trick-taking game because it isn't like everybody goes around, then somebody takes the trick, right? It's like, it's almost like a set collection. It's almost like a set exceeding. Like you're just trying to like one up everybody else's like sets that they're creating along the way. And I have had some rounds of Scout where like, there's like these waves in Scout, right? Like somebody plays a big hand, a couple people like draft from it, and then somebody plays another big hand. And it like has this kind of like wave effect that goes around the table. I have hit like right after the crest of a wave, like every single time it went around for some reason. It was so painful, but I mean, it didn't like sully my opinion of the game clearly, but it was like, I just couldn't do anything in the entire game. It was just like, what is happening? It was just like the person before me every time would just like bump it up to the point where I couldn't do anything. And I was just like, oh, sucked so bad.
Yeah.
Anyway, ready to popcorn on to the next? No further thoughts about Scout?
Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to Azkadelia.
Oh goodness. As the newest Boardvenger, I get a little nervous. So I was between 2, and I guess I have to decide between the 2 at this moment. So I'm gonna go with it. It actually came out this year. I like the cozy games. If it can solo, it gets bonus points for me. So I went with Flamecraft from Lucky Duck Games. And it's not again, kind of like what McKay said. It wasn't the best game I played, but I just was so intrigued by it. It's the one I've introduced the most people to in 2022. It's just so beautifully done. It can play 1 to 5. I love that kind of number and variety. It plays great as a solo. You're basically gathering items. It's kind of like set collection in a way because you can make potions, but then you're also using your dragons to place them out. And if you put them in the right places and you have enough of the same dragons, you can like chain your actions. I liked it. I found it very simple to learn. So I love that. So I can teach somebody who maybe isn't into board games and corrupt them into my ways very easily. And it was so beautiful. So there's so many aspects of it that I just liked to introduce. The components of the game are gorgeous. They're so beautiful with that mat and everything. I will say it's a table eater though. You actually need space for this game. But I just really liked it. I thought it was really fun to play. I've played it solo and I've played it with up to 4 other people. I haven't gone to 5. I just really liked it. You get to do enchantments. I love games that you can win in different ways. It's not just, okay, there's this one line of I earn points this way, whoever can get to that first wins. You can do enchantments here, or you can go with lucky dragons, and there's different ways, and maybe everybody has a different way of getting those points, so you don't quite know where they are just yet. So I think that's what attracted me to it, and of course the art and the storyline behind the whole thing, and that's what I really loved about it. So Flamecraft was definitely my favorite for the year. It stood out to me the most.
Awesome. I haven't played it yet, but I will, just as I can't offer a counter opinion, but I would love to know your thoughts. I've been burned by bloated games before that were just like, came through Kickstarter, got like way too much added in, and just like the gameplay was not supported by the game components. And that's honestly why I shied away from Flamecraft, is I was a little bit nervous of that. It's because of like the place that it got to, and it does look like it has beautiful art, beautiful components, all of that, which I'm usually a huge sucker for. I believe it was Grim Forest that was a huge letdown to me. I was like, this is a $15 experience in a
but the houses are
$50 box.
so
Yeah.
They are, but that's like, the gameplay is like,
cute. Yeah.
it's asinine. Like, it's just,
Honestly,
there's
though,
nothing there.
interesting. I feel like they did add all these extra opponents, but I don't think they added extra things you don't need. I think they just upgraded what you have. Because I
Okay.
didn't find. I love, for example, Merchants of the Dark Road. There's too much in that box.
There's a ton.
Like, I love the game, but bringing it out, then there's too much. But I do like what they added in Flamecraft. I love the map, but I just feel like they just upgraded the experience. Instead of a board, you get a map. You do get the miniatures, and I'm not the biggest miniature you can come at me all you want. I do like the miniatures in this. And then they upgraded your coins and things like that. So it is pricey for what it is, but you're getting all upgraded items. And I don't feel anything was useless or too much, so I did enjoy that.
Okay.
And the way that they put it in the box and the game trays that they give you made it so easy. Now I can literally set this game up in 5 minutes and it's ready to go. So I do appreciate that, but I know exactly what you're talking about when you get a game and you're so excited about it. And then there's just too many added things. They already have the expansions in there. They're like, what do I use? What do I don't use? I especially hate that when they add the solo components in there, but they only list the solo components on a separate piece of paper. So you're going through trying to set up a game and you're like, what is this piece for? So I completely get that. But I do feel that they did a good job with Flamecraft personally. And that's just
good.
my
Yeah, I think,
Awesome.
McKay, the thing that I was kind of thinking of is, like, I think to answer your fear or to respond to your fear, I don't think that there's bloat in the game. And like to Azkadelia's point, now, like, what happened with the deluxe version of the game is, like, yeah, they went really hardcore on the components. And that is typical of Peter and Cardboard Alchemy. Like, when they make a game, they're like, how do we make every single piece of this as absolutely awesome to like hold and play and use as possible? So if you're talking about bloat, I don't think it's there. If you're talking about like money, because I think the deluxe can be like $80 or $90 or something. And I would say that along with other typically $80 or $90 games, I think you would be surprised at what's not there, because it's not that like complex of a game that you'd sit there, like, I mean, I remember, I think when I bought Mansions of Madness for the first time at Barnes & Noble, it was like a $90 purchase, and like that's a big hefty game, and Flamecraft is not that. But the retail version of the game, like, I'd encourage you to check out that version of it, because Lucky Duck is the one that's distributing that, and it's the there's nothing that you're missing. You're missing all the fancy stuff. You're missing the metal gold coins that feel like they took British sterling pounds and spray painted them and etched perfect dragons on them by like some artisan, in a different country. Like they're insane. And then all of the pieces. If you've played Dwellings of Eldervale, it's the same thing where they have like cardboard components that they then upgrade to like silk screened wooden components of the same shape and stuff. So like the deluxe upgrades are insane, but they're also not needed unless you're, like all of it. Yeah. So and that's what's in the retail version is just those wooden dragons, which, in the deluxe version of the game, you don't really need anymore. Now there's like a kind of like an unnecessary amount of either those or the hearts that track your score, because then you're using the plastic miniatures to move around. I also did not go in on this. I was like, no, this looks way too light for me. And then since then, I kind of like have changed my mind about it as a game, and also like a lot of other games. Like I've kind of come to the point where like Alex and I absolutely adore playing Marvel United, and Marvel United is a light game. Like it is a light game in many respects, and even lighter than Flamecraft, I think, like mechanically overall. But I think Flamecraft, especially if you're in at the retail level, it is exactly what you want it to be. I think part of the charm is, at least for me, all of the like world references to all this stuff. Like every single shop has its own like Fogo de Char and stuff like that instead of Fogo de Chao, and like they just have like all of these different references and stuff that make it very sweet. It may not be a game that like is the one that you're like, oh, like this is the meaty one that I really want to get into, but it's very, very accessible. And it's charming, and it is exactly what it is. And I think that like there are Kickstarters, like you said, that do have bloat to them, and this is not one of them. It's just one that you can have Flamecraft, and you can have absurdly nice Flamecraft. And like monetarily, maybe the absurdly nice one is not necessary, but the base version of the game is just as charming. So
That's good to know. Awesome.
Yeah, I think that Flamecraft is not that heavy, but it is very much like a wolf in sheep's clothing, where it looks very cute. It's very adorable, and when you start off the game, it's very basic. Like you can place this one dragon, you get this one thing, and that's that. And by the end of Flamecraft, you're chaining off of multiple things and then using that to move somewhere else and then chain that location too. And there are like hidden things that you're trying to get as well for the end of game scoring that I feel like all of a sudden, like the last 2 rounds or so, just like ramp up really quickly, that I really like the chaining in it. I think it's really, really clever. And I think that like depending on the level of player that you're playing it with, it can be a little bit heavier and more of a challenge just based on like who you have to be playing against. Because it is very much like a free-for-all for everyone wants the same exact things in the same exact spots because they're the good ones.
Yeah, 100% agree with Meg on that. The people that you play Flamecraft with will determine how heavy Flamecraft feels. Because you could be like, dragons! Or you could be like, oh, I took this, which changed this, which I knew you were going for. Screw you! Just like, like it's a very different experience depending on how intense you're playing it.
And it is so cheeky. Like going back to what Devon said, and as you can probably name more of them, but I think one of them is Draco Bell instead of Taco Bell.
Yes. What pun? So the puns got me, and I just was like, every one I pulled out, I was like, what shot did we get? And it was like, and I like that they make you pull the shop out and you don't reveal it. And you play the rest of the round, and then you reveal it at the very end, and you get all excited about all these different shops, and it can be different every game. So yeah.
Yeah,
Cute.
they're very cute.
I love it.
I have a completely different opinion of that game. But I'm glad I played it once. It's all your points. For me, it's too late for me. I'm glad I didn't get caught up in the Kickstarter craze, because I was like, oh, should I back this? Should I not back this? Am I gonna have FOMO? I think that the game in its entirety can be it's accessible from the retail piece of it. I thought that game was a bit predatory for gamers who love deluxeified games. Because, I mean, to everyone's point, that game is deluxe to the max for what you get. It doesn't add anything to the game experience other than the dragon and the nice metal coins, whatever. I think, McKay, if you're going to buy this game, just get it retail, and you'll be happy with the $35 that you spent versus the however many it is. Don't get me wrong. I love games that have that chain mechanic, but this will, for me right now, that would be Endless Winter. That's a whole table eater, and then you can have one thing chain into other different things. But that's how
Endless Winter eats the table, and then it eats the floor underneath the table.
And then it eats
And
you.
then it drills down, and it eats like the subfloor. It goes into the Earth's crust.
all those areas. But I do want to reiterate, this game is not for me, but it is for certain people, and I love that it is accessible, and it's something you can bring out for people who have never really played a game before, because it is easy to teach, and honestly, I think it's one of the easier games to play mechanically.
Mhm.
That's where I'm at with Flamecraft.
Cool.
Fair.
Wanting to popcorn or yeah?
Popcorn it.
I want to popcorn over to Meg.
I've had 2 games in my brain since we started, and I'm like, do I go with what I think is mechanically better or what I've actually played more?
Whatever you need to do, Meg.
I know. Can I just
Say
go
what you need to
twice?
say. Say what you need to say.
Okay, I'll do this. I'm gonna honorable mention first. No one else has done this yet, but I'm gonna quickly honorable mention.
Wait, we can honorable mention?
Yeah, I didn't know
I know.
This game just went half an hour
My
longer.
list has opened up.
I'll quickly shout out my city. I'm addicted to that game. I think I'm in my 4th. I'm playing it physically once, and I've been playing it on BGA. And I'm on my 4th and 5th campaign of it. So it's a 24 campaign polyomino game where you're just placing different. I know, Devon. Like it's 24 games, and I've played it that many times now.
No, but
It is
playing through
disgusting.
5 games in a sitting is not a big deal for my city.
Right.
It plays so incredibly fast.
And on BGA, it's so quick. So yeah, just quick. Guys, anyone go check it out on BGA right now if you have it. I'm not going to super go into this one, but it is a polyomino game.
Meg's
Go for
got
the gold, you'll always
asynchronous
win.
campaigns open. Just join one of hers.
My island is coming this year.
I'm also in the middle of 2 campaigns right now.
I couldn't understand it.
McKay, we should start one.
We should, yeah, because I'm
long-term?
halfway through 2 right now. One with my wife, one with somebody on BGA, and I've done another one another time. It's just
I would do it. I would start a campaign with all of you right after this.
Let's do
Um,
it.
so my actual game of the year for 2022 is Vagrant Song. Vagrant Song is a campaign game. It's a boss battler, and it's the reason it stands out to me in my brain, I play a lot of campaign games, and the thing that I love about it is the health system. So you have a health track, and you have like maybe 7, but I think 8 to 10-ish health, depending on the characters. And you have different actions that you do. So every turn you're placing these tokens on the different actions, and then the next turn you can't use that action again. But when your health goes to 0, you flip one of those to a wound, and you basically have 4 wounds that you can spend before you actually hit 0. So you're flipping your actions so that they're no longer usable. But because you can only put a token on one that wasn't there the turn before, you're also limiting what actions you can do round over round because you can't stay on the same one every time. So you at least need 2 actions to like ping pong back and forth between. And I think that mixed with just how they balanced the enemy system where the enemy goes after every vagrant, and you're drawing a chip from a bag, and the chips are different numbers, where I think it's like, I'm not going to know this, but like 7, 5, 4, 3, 2 of the different types of chips. So the frequency of the different attacks that they're doing and things like that, I think it's just so well balanced to be very dangerous and very hard, but still achievable. I really enjoyed it. And then the story of it is that you're these people and you're on a train and you're going car to car through the train, just trying to save the ghosts. So you're trying to restore their humanity and not fight them. And you're just trying to make them like, I don't know, move on for life. So a lot of like the text of it is like spooky, but then like you're saving them and you're like releasing their spirits, so like you're not hurting things. It's been really like creepy but sweet. I've really been loving it.
Nice. I really like Vagrant Song. Vagrant Song is one of several games in my collection that is like in the back of my head, like, oh my god, please buy a board game table, Devon. Just buy a board game table so you can keep stuff like this up and then like come back to it. But I think it's really clever. I ended up out of like titles from last year, or the year before, or whatever, I ended up getting rid of Townsfolk Tussle. I gifted it away or traded it away to someone, and then I kept Vagrant Song because I was like, out of the two of those, I was like, I'm excited more about what Vagrant Song is doing. Even if Townsfolk Tussle, I think, is like, from a production standpoint, like, peerless and sumptuous, is so nice. That Vagrant Song's gameplay, I think I really, really liked the style of it. And did you get the email about the Encore, Meg?
No.
So they have an expansion that they're coming out with a couple of different modes as well. So they've announced more content for it.
They also had single scenarios that they were selling at Gen Con in the past conventions. I did get both of those.
Nice. Yeah.
That
So
is
this
exciting.
is like I think a 5 or 7 encounter additional thing, and then also 2 or 3 more ways to like play the game.
Interesting.
I do think I'll get Vagrant Song at some point. The art, the theme, I love everything. It reminds me very much of Hollow Knight, which I've been super into lately. Which it's I don't know, it's an aesthetic that pulls at my heartstrings.
Yeah.
And I would say it's thinky like with your wounds and stuff, but I think for mechanics and like how you like things, it's not that bad. Like you're just rolling dice for actions and definitely like runnable.
Yeah, and going back to to kind of the conversation about like your fear or whatever, McKay, with like Flamecraft, like like the deluxe version of that is like $80 or $90, and and Vagrant Song is like $90, and I would feel that like if you're at that price point level, I think that you're getting a much different, larger experience out of something like Vagrant Song, which is where that kind of like conversation about when deluxification makes sense or doesn't make sense kind of comes into play. But no, Vagrant Song is really cool. It's just if I could give any caveat to that, I would say that I think you should play it at 2-player. Even if you're doing 2 players each controlling 2 characters, I think you should do it at 2 players, because we did it. I had an experience where I essentially played 2-player, had a good time, and then playing it at 4-player, just because of the way that the system works. So like in a lot of games where you have 2 to 4 characters that you're facing off against a boss, or like one enemy, it's typically like you have the player phase and then you have the enemy phase. And in Vagrant Song, the bad guy goes after every single character. And so it's good guy character, but then also the characters can choose which order they resolve in. So when you get to 4 people and you each are only controlling 1, it's very easy to lose track of whose turn it is or who hasn't gone that round. And then also, like, there were scenarios in which I would play and I would resolve my action, and then we would resolve the Haint's action, and then it was like a 15-minute period of player resolution, Haint resolution, play before it was my turn again. And I could maybe make decisions with the group, but in a cooperative experience where you're wanting people to choose to do what they want to do, it's like, oh, okay, now it's just 15 minutes where the next 15 minutes don't mean anything to me. And so if
I
there's
found
just
the best
2 of
way
you,
was 2 characters each. 2 players, 2 characters.
like I think Meg and Alex played 2 characters each, 2 players, and I think the rhythm was probably a lot better. But 4 players with a single character each, I think is probably not the way I would recommend Vagrant Song.
That's good to know.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Meg, play this game with me.
Sure.
This one's been on my radar for a long time.
It's been on mine too. I demoed it. It looked so good.
Yeah. I would love to, especially even it's again like because it's a campaign, there are different decision points that you make and different paths that unlock that even if we played, like we could have it go a completely different way than the game that I've played. And one more thing just to say about it is that it is acrylic standees. And with the art mixed with acrylic standees, it looks so beautiful. So and there's a standee for every single Haint that you fight, and they're all super unique and really, really well done. And even their stories, like, depending on the type of ghost they are and what's going on, like, it has different objectives throughout the train car. Devon's grabbing them.
They're think acrylic standees, I think they're super underrated. I don't know why more games don't do them. If you have beautiful artwork, acrylic standees are an awesome way to showcase that. I think it's a huge injustice to go to minis over, like, if you have good art. Like, I hate it when they move to minis instead of just showcasing the art on an acrylic.
I completely agree.
You don't want to paint the minis. Like, I have enough hobbies and work. I don't want to paint beautiful, but the acrylic standee, Oh, I love them so much.
Hmm.
I was talking about that 2 days ago with my son about this game, Age of Heroes. It's an X-Men worker placement, and this has
Mhm.
acrylic standees. And when you put Wolverine out, you're putting Wolverine out as the old school Wolverine. It's so cool, or Jean Grey, or Scott, or Cyclops, or whatever. Highly prefer
Like,
the
that's
acrylic over
crazy.
minis.
It's so pretty.
That's-
Put your hand
Yeah,
behind
It's
it,
nice.
Devon.
That's so nice.
Ooh.
Is it gonna focus? Is it gonna do it?
No.
Go further away.
There it is.
look
There
at
it
Oh,
is.
there we
There
go.
it
Yay!
That's beautiful.
Yeah, that's so nice.
Yeah.
Really pretty.
Yeah, they're crazy. Devon, show the dog.
The dog?
The
The
dog.
Why would Meg want anybody to see a dog? That's surprising. One sec, I gotta peel again. Someone says talk while
So
I peel.
while I'll give my outro. I was gonna leave everybody else to do it, but since we have a little bit of a lull, I have to go. I'm playing racquetball with an old guy from my church. We've been trying to
Nice.
schedule it forever, and this was the window. So I'm gonna
Aw.
bounce. I'm really sad not to hear Devon's and Nelson's. Oh, little doggy.
Good luck.
Um,
Is racquetball something you play against each other or on the
Yes.
same team?
against each other.
Racquetball is amazing.
Good luck.
Racquetball is like one of my absolute favorite activities.
There's the dog. Aww.
So
Thank you, Devon, by the way.
yeah. So Devon, sometime if we're in the same city and we can find a racquetball court somewhere, it would be awesome to play.
I would adore that. I used to play in college like consistently a
Yeah.
lot, and now it's just like it's hard to find a place like a gym or something where it's like they prioritize racquetball over like basketball or something like that.
Yeah.
So, but I love racquetball.
Anyway, so I will be watching the video later to hear Devon's and Nelson's picks. I'm sad I don't get to razz Nelson for his pick like I do every year, but that's fine. Anyway, love you all. Thank you for the time.
Bye.
I
Okay.
And then there were 5.
All right. It's hard because now I'm basically choosing who the next person chooses as well. All of the powers.
That is
two
the math
choices.
of it.
You get two
I mean,
choices.
to be fair, no matter how many people are left, you're always choosing who the next person chooses.
Nuh-uh.
Yeah, because you're choosing the person, and they get to choose.
But there's
But
only one
you're not
choice.
gonna get to choose.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying.
but you wouldn't get
Anyway.
to choose. You wouldn't get to choose theirs choice.
Devon.
anyways.
I know you're not great at social deduction.
I'm the demon. I killed you.
Devon, I'll have you go next because I'm pretty sure I highly agree with what may or may not be your game.
I don't know what you're talking about. So I mean, in terms of going to get things,
Let's see. Can he pick it up?
Right, Devon.
Oh, okay.
I'm glad he wore pants.
I was worried
I'm
when you
glad he
got
wore
such
pants.
a small box, and then I was like, oh, I understand now.
so my game of 2022 is, I know that Meg hates campaign games, but mine is Oathsworn. This is from Shadowborn Games. It is one of my favorite campaign experiences that I have tragically not gotten to play since I have received the first thing. Speaking of miniatures.
For shame.
Speaking of miniatures in which they normally stay gray and undone, because as you said, Azkadelia, ain't nobody got time for that. So I paid for somebody else's time. So I got this miniature
Oh, shoot, that's awesome.
and
Oh wow!
a bunch of other ones that are of the main heroes. And this is not a spoiler. This is the very first boss of the game that is shown off in all of the rule books and stuff like that. So Oathsworn is from Shadowborn Games. It is a boss battler. It is in a kind of like post-apocalyptic, dark, medieval, grim horror universe where the world has been taken over by a carnivorous forest called the Deepwood. And it is a 1-4 like hero boss battler, and it splits its system between 2 separate modes, a story mode and an encounter mode. And the story mode, the thing I like about Oathsworn is that even though it's like this grand kind of operatic experience, they really did a conscious effort to make it available and accessible to how you want to jump into it. So if you are like, I love narrative. And so for someone like me who loves a good story that like really grips you and pulls you into the world, they have like over 500,000 word narrative that crosses or spans the 21 different encounters. And they even have it voice narrated by James Cosmo, who was the Lord Commander Mormont from Game of Thrones. So you can have it narrated to you and really like steep yourself in it. And it's kind of like a choose your own adventure with time limits. You can only go to certain locations within the span of time, and you're trying to get a sense of what you're going to be fighting. You're uncovering like a mystery or a narrative that is unfolding while you make decisions, and you're like, oh, these people are getting attacked. What are they getting attacked by? Oh, let me go talk to these victims. Oh, and these victims have, they didn't really see it. They just saw what was left after, it appeared. And so you have this whole narrative experience where you're prepping for the fight, and then you have the encounter mode where you have the fight. So if you really like narrative, you can lean into it as much as you want, but there's also an instant action mode where they've condensed the entire narrative of a chapter into one long spiral-bound notebook page, and you can just read through it, make quick decisions, and jump into it if what you care about is the fight. And then once you get to the boss battler, they've once again tried to make it as accessible as possible, because there's this one element to the design where you always have to have 4 characters. Whether you're playing with 1, 2, 3, or 4 people, you're controlling 4 characters. But they have this companion system, which is like typically, some people might have a game where you have a very truncated or AI type of character that you can control to make things easier. But in this, they use a companion system, and it takes the entirety of a character and condenses them down to like just 1 or 2 cards that you're controlling, but they have reduced the amount of decisions and increased the strength of those decisions to where the companion feels just as strong and impactful as a regular character, albeit they're just easier to use. And so if you're playing solo Azkadelia, you could be like, you know what, I want to control 1 character, and then I'm going to have 3 of them be companions, and I can really like breeze through the decision process. Or you might, halfway through the game, you might be like, now that we're all like level 5, I've played this character a lot, and I know all these other characters, and I really want to mix it up. And you could take the character you've been playing and turn it into a companion and not lose really much of anything other than the scope of the decisions, and you could turn another companion into a full character. Cool. And so, and like, another thing, you could start playing with 2 people, and maybe they don't play games like you, and you could have a full character or 2 full characters, and then you could give each of them a companion. And then when they feel like they've watched you for long enough and they feel like they know how to play, they could just be like, hey, I'm ready to play a full character now. And you could just scale them up to a full character. So it's a really, really clever way of reducing how long the game takes to play or how much stuff you have to manage. And really making it available to people of all different flavors, because there are some people that are like in the solo community that are playing this game and they're doing 4 full characters because they want all of those decisions, but you don't have to play that way. I mean, you could just play 4 companions if you want. If you don't even want to play as full characters, you can just play them all in companion mode. So it's really, really clever. They have a unique system that switches, that allows you to choose between dice and cards or a combination of the 2. So if you really like dice chucking, it's like a push your luck kind of combat system. And you can roll a bunch of dice if you're like Meg and you like go crazy with criticals and stuff like that. Or you can be a little bit more nuanced and use the card decks because they're finite. So the more you use the card decks, the more you actually know exactly what cards and values are left on them, whether they're blank and you're going to miss or whether they're a critical and you really want to pull that. So there are just so many systems. I don't necessarily think that Oathsworn is the most innovative game that's ever been made, but it has like 4 or 5 systems that you may see in other games, and in Oathsworn they do it really, really, really well to where like the sum of the whole is so much bigger than all of its parts. And it's just I've played just 2 of the 21 encounters, but then I've also demoed and taught people at Essen and stuff, so I've played the first encounter like a bajillion times. But it's the game that like I'm physically upset that I have not been able to play. and it's such a good system. I like it a lot. So
Sounds like there's a lot of really cool mechanics in that game. A lot of like flexibility to make sure that you're fitting the play style that you are. I appreciate that a lot.
One of the things I really love in it is it's a boss battler, and the monsters, it matters their orientation. So if they move forward a certain way, they stay oriented that way, and you're targeting attacks towards like their sides or their back or their head. So you're trying to hit certain parts based on where you're angled. So it's also part of the puzzle of like, well, I really want to be hitting the left side right now, so I also need to make sure I can move and then attack because we're trying to like take out that side first. I would say not enough games do that have like boss battling like that. Yeah, I enjoy that.
So how long does the scenario take? Is it a
I mean,
how much gameplay is the 21 scenario campaign?
Oh, I mean, if you really like, if you do the full narrative of everything, you're looking at least an hour there, I think. And then I think they try to say 60 minutes for the story, 90 minutes for the encounter. But I would say the encounters probably skew closer to 2 hours.
Okay.
So I mean, like 3 hours per encounter, and 63 hours total.
That's a lot of game.
And then, but that's just like, I mean, if you play with 4 characters, there's 12 characters, there's 12 heroes that you could be. So you could play the campaign through 3 different times with completely different characters, and
so you can easily reset it and everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like if you just wanted to start back in encounter 1, it's not a legacy game. It's not as you play, you're ruining the game for the next time based off of like changing the board state. It is a set narrative that you can just go back through again. But based off the story mode, the decisions you make might drastically shift depending on which choose your adventure choices you make. But the encounter will always be the same. It's just maybe how you're prepared for the encounter or the story that you unlock along the way. But I mean, if you're talking about just the flat characters that you have, you could play the campaign through 3 full times with, a different set of 4 characters.
That's really cool. And then each character, I assume, has like different strengths or classes or anything that you can.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, for people that are familiar with Gloomhaven and stuff, it's kind of like a system where you have cards, and then as you level up, you can introduce new cards into your hand. It's not as robust or deep of a like card management system as Gloomhaven, but it is like progressive unlocks, and you get items and stuff. And there is like narrative aspects, like maybe if you cut off its tail, maybe you'll like turn its tail into a flail and you'll get that item,
That's
so different cool stuff like that, and it scales up as you go. So
nice.
I wish we played more narrative games in this household. It's hard for us to get them to the table and for them to stay in the table as well. We did Robin Hood for a little bit. I think we did 4 or 5 scenarios, and then we just stopped. We stopped for months, and then finally, we just put it away. It was in the board game table, and we were playing on top of it. Like, we got to get back to this, and we just were never able to get back to it. We got caught up in Sleeping Gods and both from leader games, and we have yet to even begin to play those games. But I really want to. I love the idea of it. I know that if I were to get a game like that, I have to really highly depend on Meg to say, "Hey, let's play this game."
Yeah, because I'm the opposite. I get addicted where as soon as I'm in it, I'm like, I have to complete it. I have to do the next one. I played Clank Legacy in 2 weeks. I was like, I need more. I need it.
I've never played a legacy game.
Really?
Oh, goodness.
No, I want to, but play most of my games solo, so it's kind of hard.
I think Pandemic
That's the
could be
best way.
Yeah, I think Pandemic could be a really good solo legacy experience. Like Pandemic Season 1, I played a 2-player, but we each controlled 2 different, I don't even know what they're called in that, people in that game. And that was a really
Future victims.
Yes, that's correct. Thanks, Devon. But that was a really satisfying experience, and I think you could easily do that either 2 or 4-handed. But Pandemic Legacy is just a super good legacy game to get you into the system, but also it's a really interesting and cool story, I thought.
Pandemic Legacy was one of those experiences. I played it with, there were 4 of us and we played through all of it. And then it was kind of one of those things where we finished and I was like, well, that was so good. That's the only way I ever want to play Pandemic.
Yep.
And I've never played base Pandemic since then because I was like, Pandemic Legacy was like my Pandemic. Like that's what I wanted it to be. So, but no, it's really good. And I do think you could probably play it solo, Azkadelia.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll check it out.
Yeah.
And with the
Well,
games
I'm
you
gonna
like,
go
you might
ahead.
like Robin Hood too.
Are you talking about the one, The Adventures of Robin Hood?
Yes. Yeah. I
had
bet you
it,
enjoy it.
And I've been wanting to try it, so maybe I'll try that.
Nice. Well, I think there's only one option left, so I'm gonna go popcorn over to Roberto. Roberto, what's your game of? What's up, Nelson? What you want to talk about?
So I would like to talk about Ark Nova. So Ark Nova is my game of the year. It's catapulted pretty highly on BGG. It's already at number 4. It's in the top 4. It did get published in 2021. However, I didn't hear about it until 22, and I didn't play it until Origins with Roberto. So most of my new gaming experiences or my top gaming experiences were with Roberto himself, but in Ark Nova, in Ark Nova, you're controlling and building a zoo while also supporting conservation efforts from around the world. And so there's this dichotomy of victory points where you are trying to build up the reputation of your zoo and make it a really cool place for people to come visit. However, you're also trying to, support and conserve wetlands and all of these things. And it's victory points that start, at the opposite ends of the victory point track. The game ends when those 2 victory point markers cross. So you can't really lean into one type of strategy. You can't just make the most awesome zoo and ignore all of the good deeds around the world and expect to win, because it's very easy to score negative victory points in this game if you don't cross those markers towards the end. But I love the theme. I think that they implemented it really well. It feels like a very cool theme to mechanic ratio, where I don't typically care about that. I mean, you could boil this down to probably cubes and I'd be okay with it. But the fact that they use different animals, it's Terraforming Mars-esque, where every single card is a different, unique card, and you're building out your own personal zoo. So similar to like Agricola, where you have permanent structures on your map, and then whenever you cover specific spots on your map, then you get bonuses, and every zoo can be unique. And it leads to a highly replayable experience that I feel like, and the other reason I really like it is I feel like every single time I play it, I am learning how to play it better, because it's just such an expansive game, and there's so much going on in the game that I guess that's also kind of a downside. If you take someone who's played it 10 times, they're probably going to just steamroll someone who's never played it before. So it is a game where you are going to be learning pretty significantly over your multiple plays, which I appreciate, but could be viewed as a downside now that I say it out loud.
No, yeah, I think Ark Nova is. I think it's a really, really solid game. I like the competing tracks that eventually cross over each other, and I like that feeling. I also I didn't really think about it until you were mentioning about the idea of negative victory points, but it does remind me a little bit of Feast for Odin, where when you start the game, you're like, am I gonna make points at the end of this? Like, am I gonna score anything?
Yeah.
And it's like by the end of it, you're like, oh, I am. Like, I've built up enough momentum to push past it. I do think that the kind of juxtaposition of what you're trying to build in your hand in terms of sets and different types of animals, and then the conservation projects around the world, it does have a lot of interesting scoring elements to it. I think that for me, we've talked a little bit across the video about price and what it gives you. This being such a pricey game, to what, I am unfortunate, for better or worse. I am someone who does derive some level of my experience from the visual appeal of a game, and I have zero visual appeal for this game. It feels like a high schooler did an insane natural animal photo clip art project. It does not look good to me. And like I think that at the end of the day, if they were going to try to make it look exceptional based off of how many cards there are, I feel like that game would be astronomically expensive. It would essentially, to me, probably shift it from the price of the $90 or whatever where it was at to like the $130 of like a Lacerda title, with Eagle Griffin. So I understand why they didn't, just logistically and production wise, but it does make it to where it is not a super like visually engrossing experience for me. And then also, I said this at one point sometime, and I obviously got feedback from people, which you always do in the internet, where I was like, it's at least a 2-hour game. I was like, and anything that is between 2 and 3 hours, I was like, competes for games in my collection that are 2 to 3 hours that I really like.
Mhm.
And it was just kind of one of those things where I was like, I don't see myself picking it over other games that take that long, because it's hard for me to get games that take that long to the table, and I just like other ones more. And there were people that were like, you should be getting it to like 60 in a 2-player game, and they were like, you should never have it be more than 90 once you know how to play. And I was like, I of course, yes, I know I'm wrong, but in this instance, it doesn't matter to me. But yeah, no, I think it's a great game. It's just a great game that sits alongside titles that speak to me like substantially more.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up, because that's one of the biggest things that I have learned about the game is you cannot. And I think the reason people are saying that it should be a 60-minute game is because the best strategy is to rush the game. It is not supposed to be an engine builder. It's not. You cannot play it as an engine builder. It's a game where you are consistently looking for how to score conservation points and rush that strategy. And that's why when I was saying earlier, someone who's played it 10 times.
Because that's the track that moves slowest, right?
Yes. Yeah. And so like every conservation point is, I think on average, like 3 reputation points. Or not reputation. They have too many points.
I know what you're talking about. There's
Yeah,
the track
yeah.
that you consistently get points with, and then the one that is harder to catch up is the conservation.
Yeah.
It's the one that's harder to find those points.
Yeah. And that was my biggest complaint about the game, is the time that it takes. And when I did some digging, and I've played it a couple more times since then, it feels like a much quicker game and a much smaller experience once you shift from I need to build the best zoo, I want to hold on to these cards, to how can I score conservation points fast and go as quick as possible. And then it does get down to about an hour to 90-minute game when you shift your focus. Because I think a lot of people are comparing it to Terraforming Mars, where in Terraforming Mars, it feels like you're kind of building up this engine to run, and people want to do that in Ark Nova, and it's not the most effective strategy in Ark Nova.
Gotcha. Interesting. That's good to know.
Yeah, but I do agree with the art. It's not super visually appealing, but that's not something I put a lot of stock into.
Sure.
The only downside I have for Ark Nova is that damn coffee cup. Who's gonna move it?
No one ever.
I remember to move it.
Break counter or whatever.
Yeah.
yeah. That's my only gripe with that. That, and coming from, it's been compared to Terraforming Mars already a ton. As we're talking about it, if they had done a recessed board, so I think that's one of the first things that came out for the TM board, was people made acrylic overlays for their board. But again, that's hiking the price up if you were to add a recessed board, because that also drives me bananas when you can have something so nicely organized on a board. But we leave that up to other people. And just buy a third-party acrylic overlay.
When you've been playing for an hour and a half and you sneeze and ruin the entire game.
Yeah.
The table and everything goes everywhere. Like, dang it. Yeah.
That's how you get it to 60 to 90 minutes. You just
Rage
sneeze.
quit. Yeah.
I think I was winning, but
I think my victory point was over here, actually. Yeah.
Nice.
17
Ark Nova I haven't tried yet.
conservation.
I haven't tried it, but I've wanted to. It's on the top of my list of games I want to try.
And I've heard really good things about the
it's a
solo
good game.
experience.
Like, it's a good game.
Hmm.
I don't know if I don't know how intense Terraforming Mars is for you, Meg. I think for Alex, he was like I still love Terraforming Mars more.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, it's like I totally understand the praise that it gets. It just, for certain elements, it just doesn't hit where, my
So
kind of stuff. But it is really good.
it was called Ark Nova, and with that plus the cover, I thought it was like a religious game about trying to pair up animals like before the flood comes.
That was so. It wasn't just me. I was like,
So I was like,
because it's got the divine light in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I thought,
Yeah.
When
I think it
people
wasn't
started
until you
talking
guys
about
played
it,
it
I
at
was
Origins.
like,
Yeah.
I gotta be honest. As someone in the South, like, I can see why people might have an appeal for this, but I'm surprised that this is unanimously loved as much as it.
Yeah.
Totally am with you. So
Yeah.
much with you, Meg. Oh.
Yeah, I saw what I thought was the theme, and I was like, not for me. And then you guys played it, and I was like, so how was it? And you like explained what it was about, and I was like, well, that's really bad branding because I
Yeah.
had no idea.
Yeah. No. Yep. Totally agree. I don't know if it deserves to be a 4.
What make your zoo 2x2 and
Yeah.
just bring the
Yeah.
animals on.
A boy and a
Yeah.
girl.
I mean, ultimately, that's the ultimate conservation story. I mean, at the end of the day, like,
The divine conservation points.
Yeah.
like Noah got so many conservation points. He was just like racing up that track. That is
that's funny.
hilarious.
Yeah.
Goodness.
Any honorable mentions? Meg already said some of hers, but
What?
Oh,
my
I mean,
second-
honorable mention for me would be Dune Imperium: Rise of Ix, which it's an expansion, sorry, Rise of Ix, and then also more Immortality. Recently, when I was up in, I mean, I have a ton of other ones that I won't go into. There's like 20 on my honorable mentions or on my overall list, but Meg and I had the opportunity to play Immortality and Rise of Ix with the base game and do the epic mode, and it was just
Fun.
Dune Imperium is an amazing game, and any excuse to play it again, it makes me happy. So, such a good game.
I have that in a box downstairs.
You should open that box.
I plan on doing that this week.
Nelson, you've still never played base Dune Imperium, right?
I have not. No.
I
Oh,
want to be there
Game
for your
is
first.
it's
Oh.
so satisfying. Meg taught it to me, and it was just such a satisfying experience.
So good.
to Play Dune Imperium,
God,
yeah.
that game is so good.
Nice.
Azkadelia, I think I jumped the gun though. What were you gonna say? You got super excited.
My honorable mention, because I was between two, was Creature Comforts.
Mhm.
I like cozy games. It's just kind of a thing. It's another one you can solo. And I just like the set collection of it. And again, being able to go around the map. You're trying to make the coziest den for winter. And the art in it, and they're coming out with Maple Valley, which is why it's kind of sticking out to me. And I got to demo that with them. They showed me all of Maple Valley coming out, and I just love that they're creating a whole world. But the second game is not going to be the first game.
Oh, it's so different. It's so different.
Very different, and I love that they're creating that world, and I'm very excited. Yeah, Creature Comforts was definitely my honorable mention.
Good old kids table board gaming.
Nice. One of my honorable mentions is a fairly older game, but it's a new to me, and it's super satisfying that McKay is not here because I know it's one of his favorite games, and that is that's Aeon's End.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so Aeon's End has been out for probably like 4 to 6 years now, but I picked it up for the first time now, and it's a cooperative deck building asymmetric experience that I was blown away with. I thought it's got some really cool mechanics. You never shuffle your deck, so you have some like structure on how you're discarding and what's coming up next, and there's just it's a story narrative driven game, and so it's got a lot there, and Aeon's End was just very, very solid. I have a couple more expansions also downstairs in boxes for that.
I got really into Verban rights this year, and I can't decide between Hadrian's Wall and this isn't a Verban right, but that one or Cat in the Box, because they both just wildly different games, but I can't decide which one I kind of like more at the moment. Verban right, yeah, flip, roll.
Oh.
Verban, I like if you played Astra, it's everything, and then right. Verban right.
I think Cat the Box is such a I love trick taking games. Spades was one of my favorite card games growing up. It's just hard to I think why I like trick-taking games so much is that Spades was a game that I loved, but I hardly got to play. Because you have to find 4 people that are roughly equal in talent that want to sit down and play, and only 4. And like all these other ones are like, no, you can have whatever amount of player count you need. We've figured out the mechanics for you to have fun with trick-taking. And Cat in the Box was like, I feel like at this point I'm like, oh, the crew's out, Tidal Blade's Banner Festival's out, like, Ghosts of Christmas came out. All these games, I'm like, okay, there's probably not a way to make trick-taking interesting again. There's all these different ones, And then Cat in the Box was like, no, like, what if you have suits, but you don't have suits? And then you just, like, have numbers, and then you decide what suit it is, and when you run out of that suit. And you're like, wait, what? And they're like, no, like, there is no suit reality, and you make the suit reality.
Meow.
Yeah. Meow. Right.
At the risk of
sorry,
just
Devon.
opening a whole nother conversation, has anyone played Brian Bordeaux?
No.
It's a
Brian Baru?
Brian Baru, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
I know-
trick-taking area control game. It's a really cool
That's
game.
fun.
It looks like Enish on the cover.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like kind of like Celtic style.
Yeah.
Hmm.
That was really well implemented. I thought it was a really well.
Nice.
It's I like the idea of taking 2 mechanics and then combining them together where it's not something you would normally see, right? Like trick taking and area control. How do you make that work? And I thought that they pulled that off really well. And it's another way that I saw this year that they made trick taking more interesting.
Yeah, no, I've always thought of it as like a lighter thing, but the one of the few games, like I've been spending a year trying to not buy any games, and one of the few games where I was like genuinely upset that I did not back the campaign was Arcs from Leader Games, and it's like trick taking and like 4x space,
That's cool.
and it was so cool, and I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, I love both of these, and how they've been implemented was a blast. So no, that makes me more curious about Brian Baru because I haven't played that one.
Yeah, I thought it was good. I thought it was actually it was at least interesting.
Nice.
Further
And
shout out
that
to
was-
Waffle Machina.
That was a 2022 game. I think I played that on like
Waffle
January
Machina.
2nd. Like,
Aw, that's funny.
yeah, it was like that one of those first new games to me. But yeah.
Fresh.
Shear
another one
Boredom,
I
do you
almost
wanna
said
give
was
us
Hoplomachus.
I'm just, no, I'm backing out,
Very good.
backing out. So you talk about Hoplomachus. just stepping out of the outro pass so that we can talk about Hoplomachus.
It's a good game. Check it out. It's good. That's all. There's chips.
And we're back in.
Shear Boredom, you want to give us the outro?
We can absolutely do the outro. That was our Game of the Years for 2022. Boardvenger style, Boardvenger season, Boardvenger's something or another. It happened. Do you agree? Did you disagree? Leave a comment down below. Make sure to like and subscribe. And probably gonna have to cut this out. Before we do a full wrap, let's go back over everyone and where we're from, and we'll start with Azkadelia because now that McKay is gone, it's all different now.
I am Azkadelia, the Azkadorkable gamer. Again, you can find me on Instagram and TikTok, and yeah.
I can't. I keep saying Azkadelia, and then you immediately say, "Oh, it's Azkadelia." I need to be better
That's not
at
me
that.
correcting you at all. I don't mind how you say it. Everybody
Cool.
has a different question. That's not me correcting you.
Thank you.
Secretly, she's
Thank
like,
you.
I can't believe this.
Yeah, this guy, Devon.
I am Devon Talks Tabletop. You can see me on my own channel, Devon Talks Tabletop. I'm also over on Board Game Co. with Alex and Meg. And then I also do playthroughs with Play the Game HQ, who are my friendly local Little Rock content creator neighbors. So yeah, all 3 of those spots you can find me. And then here with Boardvengers.
Nelson.
I am Nelson all over. So you can find me on Twitch or YouTube, and if you like card games, it's Nelson all over cards.
Professor Meg.
I'm all over the interwebs, but you can also find me on Camp Co-op playing some co-op games, live streaming on YouTube, and sometimes Twitch.
And I'm Roberto. Shear Boredom Table Talk on YouTube, Shear Boredom on, well, everywhere else. Shear like scissors, board like board game, horrible for SEO. Thank you again, and until next time, happy gaming.
Happy gaming.
Thanks for watching.
Bye, guys.